While the world panics, the rarest individuals remain composed. They walk through storms as if the sun still shines. What if I told you that this is not a gift, but a mindset anyone can build? Ladies and gentlemen, while the world spirals in emotional overreaction, a rare breed of people walk tall, untouched by chaos, unmoved by criticism, and unaffected by external noise. They don't possess superhuman abilities. What they possess is something far more valuable, an inner state of dominance over their own emotions. And today I will show you exactly how to build that power. If you've ever been shaken by opinions, distracted by setbacks, or paralyzed by stress, this message will reset the way you live and lead. Because the ability to act as if nothing affects you is the foundation of unshakable success. Stay with me, because by the end of this, you'll know how to walk through fire and never smell like smoke. Composure in chaos is not merely a desirable trait, it is a necessity for those who intend to lead, achieve, and rise above mediocrity. In moments when everything seems to fall apart, when plans collapse, people betray, markets shift, or circumstances spiral out of your control, most individuals surrender to panic. Their thinking becomes scattered, their emotions dictate their decisions, and they react impulsively. But the individual who remains composed, even while chaos surrounds them, instantly separates themselves from the masses. They rise above not because they are smarter or more talented, but because they retain control over the one thing that matters most, their state of mind. Consider a battlefield general in the heat of war. Explosions shatter the air, soldiers scream, uncertainty reigns. Yet the commander who remains calm becomes the anchor for his troops. His mind, uncluttered by fear, can assess terrain, anticipate enemy moves, and issue clear orders while others are paralyzed. He is not devoid of emotion, he has simply learned not to obey it. That ability alone can determine whether a battle is won or lost. Transpose this example into business, sports, or everyday life, and the principle remains the same. When a CEO faces a financial crisis and calmly evaluates solutions, while competitors are firing staff and making erratic decisions, they seize opportunities others cannot see. When an athlete misses a critical shot in a high-stakes game, but centers their focus instead of crumbling, they often become the one who scores when it matters most. Chaos magnifies weakness in most, but for the composed, it becomes a stage for greatness. You'll notice that people instinctively gravitate toward calm individuals during turbulent times. They look for someone who seems to have it together, someone who isn't easily rattled, someone who makes them feel safe. That is the true power of composure. It not only stabilizes your own performance, it amplifies your influence over others. While the noise increases, your silence becomes power. While confusion spreads, your clarity becomes leadership. The calm individual earns trust without begging for it, because people can sense that their strength is not show, it is self-mastery. And this kind of composure is not reserved for the elite. It is cultivated through daily decisions to pause instead of panic, to observe instead of react, to think before speaking. You may not control the chaos, but you always control how you respond to it. Every achievement, every failure, every repeated experience in your life is rooted not in external events, but in the dominant thoughts you carry in your mind day after day. Thought is not idle, it is creative. It is the builder of your inner world and, by extension, your outer reality. Whatever you consistently think about, whether it is fear, doubt, success, or confidence, becomes the blueprint upon which your actions, reactions, and results are built. The mind does not question whether your thoughts are helpful or harmful, true or false. It simply accepts what you feed it and begins to turn those thoughts into patterns, habits, and ultimately outcomes. The dominating thought is not the fleeting idea that crosses your mind. It is the one that takes root, the one you water daily with your attention, the one you emotionally attach yourself to until it becomes a belief. Consider someone who constantly thinks, "I'm not good enough." Even if they have talent, even if others see their potential, this dominating thought will silently shape their behavior. They will hesitate when it's time to act. They'll turn down opportunities they feel unworthy of. They may self-sabotage or unconsciously attract relationships and environments that confirm that belief. Their reality starts to conform to that thought, and soon they say, "See, I was right." But they weren't right, they were just loyal to the wrong thought. On the other hand, someone who feeds their mind with the thought, I am capable of overcoming anything, it begins to view problems as challenges instead of barriers. They take more action, recover more quickly from setbacks, and become more magnetic to progress. Their reality shifts not because the world around them changed, but because the lens through which they saw it was changed. A powerful example of this can be seen in the story of entrepreneurs who begin with no capital, no connections, and no formal education, yet succeed wildly. Their dominating thought is not, I'm disadvantaged. It is, I will figure this out no matter what. That thought drives them to seek solutions where others see obstacles. It keeps them persistent when most give up. It influences the tone of their voice in meetings, the decisions they make under pressure, and the people they attract. Because their dominant internal conversation is one of belief and determination, their external results begin to reflect that belief. Reality begins to bend in favor of the thought they chose to dwell on. This principle applies to every field of life in relationships. A person who constantly thinks, people always leave me, will find a way to push people away, even without realizing it. In health, someone who thinks, I can't get fit, will never follow through long enough to see results, even if they know exactly what to do. Thought precedes effort. Thought precedes habit. Thought precedes identity. Whatever you allow to dominate your mental environment will eventually dominate your physical environment. You are never simply thinking, you are shaping. Your reality is not some external force you are helpless against. It is an echo of your most repeated, most emotionally charged thoughts. The greatest power any individual can attain is not the ability to control others or manipulate circumstances, but the ability to control how they react. Life will always deliver unpredictability. People will disappoint you. Plans will fall apart. Criticism will come without warning, and the unexpected will interrupt your carefully crafted path. Most people live in a constant state of reaction, emotionally triggered by every inconvenience, controlled by every rude comment, hijacked by every minor setback. But the person who masters their reaction becomes the master of their life. They do not give away power to fleeting emotions. They do not allow others to determine their mood, direction, or energy. They respond rather than react, and in doing so, they maintain the one thing that matters most, agency over themselves. Imagine two people faced with the exact same challenge, the sudden loss of a job. The first reacts with panic, blaming the economy, their boss, or luck. They spiral into fear, make desperate decisions, and view the loss as a personal attack. The second pauses. They acknowledge the reality, but they do not let it dictate their self-worth or future. They treat the event as data, not drama. They respond with clarity, updating their resume, reaching out to contacts, evaluating what they want to do next. The event is the same, but their reactions create entirely different paths forward. One becomes a victim of circumstance, the other becomes a commander of change. This is not about denying emotion. It is about denying emotion the right to lead. When you learn to master your reaction, you stop being a puppet of external triggers. You no longer rise and fall based on how others treat you. A negative comment no longer derails your day. A delay or rejection no longer robs you of your confidence. You begin to respond with intention, not impulse. That response is rooted in principle, not pressure. And from that place of mental discipline, life starts to bend in your favor. People trust you more because you're not volatile. Opportunities flow to you because you can be relied upon under stress. Even adversity begins to serve you because you're no longer knocked off course by every gust of wind. One powerful example of this truth can be seen in elite athletes. In a high-pressure game, the player who reacts emotionally to a bad call or a missed opportunity usually continues to spiral, playing worse and hurting the team. But the athlete who maintains poise even when the game turns against them becomes the one coaches trust in the final moments. Their ability to manage emotion under fire makes them valuable far beyond raw skill. The same principle applies to business, relationships, and leadership. Those who keep their heads when others lose theirs become the natural point of gravity for stability, strategy, and progress. They don't merely survive difficult moments, they shape what those moments become. Every situation is neutral until you give it meaning, and the meaning is forged in your reaction. The world around you, your circumstances, your setbacks, your victories, the people in your life is neutral. It carries no built-in meaning. The environment does not come with labels like good, bad, lucky, or unfair. Those labels are created entirely in your mind. What you experience is one thing. What you believe about that experience is another. The problem for most people is not the event itself, but the interpretation they attach to it. They confuse the circumstance with the story, and in doing so, they create suffering that has nothing to do with reality and everything to do with perception. The meaning you assign to an event becomes the emotional filter through which you experience it, and that emotional filter either empowers or paralyzes you. Take, for instance, the experience of failure. Two people lose the same business deal. One says, "This proves I'm not cut out for this," and begins to withdraw, riddled with doubt. The other says, "This is part of the game, now I know how to play it better," and uses the experience as fuel to improve. The external event is identical, but the internal meaning attached to it couldn't be more different. One person uses the event as a reason to shrink, the other as a reason to rise. The environment didn't choose that outcome, their mind did. Every setback, delay, or rejection can either be a reason to quit or a lesson to refine. The mind decides which path is taken. And because of that, the real battleground of life is not out there, it is in your interpretation. This principle is especially visible in stories of individuals who come from extremely difficult environments, poverty, trauma, neglect, and yet rise to extraordinary heights. They are not defined by their surroundings because they chose not to interpret their environment as a prison. Instead, they turned it into a proving ground, a place to forge resilience. Others in the same environment may succumb to bitterness or blame, but the difference is not in what they faced, it is in what they made it mean. A harsh upbringing can mean life is unfair, or it can mean I was trained to endure. A failed relationship can mean I'm unlovable, or it can mean now I understand what I deserve. The power lies not in changing the environment, but in mastering the meaning. Even everyday annoyances carry this truth. A traffic jam can be a source of stress and rage, or it can be an opportunity to think, to reflect, to practice patience. A rude comment from a stranger can be taken personally or dismissed as a reflection of their state of mind, not yours. The difference is not in the event, it is in your mental framing. When you internalize this truth, you begin to realize that most of what disturbs your peace was never about the outside world at all. The world may throw you storms, but the meaning you give to those storms is what determines whether you drown in them or learn how to sail. One of the most underestimated forces in human development is the subconscious mind. It governs our habits, our reactions, and our self-image, and unlike the conscious mind, it does not argue, question, or analyze. It accepts whatever is repeated, emotional, and consistent. This is why acting as if behaving in alignment with the person you want to become, even before you fully believe you are that person, is such a powerful tool for transformation. When you act with confidence, speak with certainty, walk with purpose, and make decisions as if you already possess the traits you admire, you begin reprogramming the subconscious mind to accept this new identity as truth. Over time, what once felt like performance becomes personality. You are not pretending, you are training. Think of someone who desires to become a confident public speaker, but currently trembles at the thought of standing on a stage. If they wait until they feel ready, they will wait forever. But if they begin to carry themselves as someone who enjoys speaking even in small ways, like speaking up in meetings, practicing tone and posture, or volunteering for small presentations, their subconscious begins to receive a new signal. Repeated enough times, that signal becomes belief. Confidence, in this case, does not come before the behavior. The behavior comes first, and belief follows. The act of doing reshapes the self-image, and the self-image reshapes the quality of every future action. This principle is visible in leadership as well. A young manager who doubts their authority may feel overwhelmed in meetings or hesitant to make decisions. But if they begin to act as if they are already a strong leader by speaking clearly, holding eye contact, and making firm choices, they project an image of authority that others begin to respond to. The feedback loop reinforces the behavior, and eventually the inner sense of leadership becomes real. The subconscious no longer holds on to the old story of insecurity. It adapts to the new pattern being fed into it. The external action becomes internalized. You train the subconscious not through wishful thinking, but through intentional action repeated over time. Even in daily habits, this law holds firm. Someone who wants to become more disciplined might start by waking up early, organizing their workspace, or setting boundaries with their time. At first, it feels foreign, almost like role-playing. But as these behaviors continue, the subconscious mind adjusts. The person no longer tries to be disciplined, they simply are. The behavior rewrites the identity. By acting as if the transformation is already complete, you lead the mind to catch up. The subconscious responds to demonstration, not debate. You can't talk your way into confidence or strength or clarity. You must act your way into it. In a world addicted to urgency, noise, and reaction, stillness stands out as a rare and magnetic force. Stillness is not inaction or passivity. It is controlled restraint, intentional calm, and a deep inner anchoring that radiates strength without the need to prove it. It is the mark of someone who is not easily moved by pressure, not triggered by chaos, and not desperate for validation. When you meet someone who carries this kind of presence, you notice it immediately. They speak less, but with more weight. They move slowly, but with purpose. They are not in a rush to convince or compete because their value is not tied to noise, it's rooted in clarity. Stillness, when mastered, becomes an unspoken form of power that attracts attention, respect, and influence without effort. Consider how people respond during a crisis. Most rush to speak, to act, to show that they are doing something, anything to fix the problem. But the person who remains composed, who doesn't allow panic to dictate their decisions, immediately becomes the focal point of trust. Others look to them not because they are louder, but because they are stable. This dynamic plays out in leadership, negotiations, and high-stakes environments of every kind. A negotiator who does not rush to fill silence, who holds eye contact calmly, who pauses instead of pleading, often secures the most favorable outcomes. Not because they are forceful, but because their stillness conveys certainty. That certainty makes people lean in not out of fear, but because they sense strength behind the silence. Even in relationships and social dynamics, stillness draws power. The individual who listens more than they speak, who doesn't flinch at emotional bait, who remains calm when others raise their voice, that person gains silent control of the room. Their lack of reactivity shifts the emotional balance. It makes them appear more thoughtful, more in control, and paradoxically more influential. This is why people are naturally drawn to those who exhibit quiet confidence. It is not because they do more, but because they move less. In a culture where everyone is trying to be seen, stillness makes you unforgettable. You become the calm in the storm, the unmoved mover, the signal in the noise. This principle is also evident in martial arts and elite performance. The master does not flail or overextend. They conserve energy. They wait. They move only when movement is required, and when they act, it is deliberate. Their stillness is not weakness, it is strategy. The inexperienced fighter wastes motion and energy trying to dominate through activity. The master, on the other hand, dominates through presence. Stillness is their edge. And that same principle applies beyond the arena in business, in conflict, in leadership, in personal growth. The more still you become inside, the more precise and powerful your movements are outside.